All right, this is exciting, isn't it?
Here we go, guys, in 5, 4, 3.
Here we go.
It's time for Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive.
Thank you for the good programming. I appreciate the content and really enjoyed every moment.
It's a privilege to have you on your station and listen. It's good stuff. It's very educational.
It's time for Joan Esposito on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey there, welcome to Bad Attitude Tuesday. I will try not to be quite as crabby as I usually am on Tuesdays because Matt Byrne is filling in for Paul Shivari today, and Matt doesn't really deserve this abuse. Only Paul Shivari gets the Class A abuse that I can deal out. And he's off today. It's his wife's birthday. Happy birthday. So I have no one to kick around, which is making Bad Attitude Tuesday very sad attitude Tuesday. We will persevere. We will persevere. So let's just quick get Iran out of the way. Everything I told you yesterday is still the same today. Okay? Donald Trump continues to threaten to bomb Oman, our ally, who has been trying to mediate an agreement with the Iranians. But Donald Trump feels that they are not doing what he wants them to do, that they are not negotiating an agreement that will prevent the Iranians from controlling the Strait of Hormuz. So it's the Omanis' fault. Do we follow that? Does that make any sense to anybody? Does that make any sense? You're in a mess. Somebody's trying to help you out of the mess. And you don't like, what? The way they're helping you? So you decided that you're going to attack them? You know, why am I even acting like this is crazy? Why am I even... This man makes no sense. No sense at all. I mean, if I were Oman, I would just say, you know what? Clearly, President Trump, we are not conducting these negotiations in a way that you want us to, in a way that you feel good about. So, you know, it probably would be better for everyone involved if you found another mediator. What do you think about that? What do you think about that? I've already reported to you, only Tuesday, but we've already had word that Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and Bahrain have all been meeting privately to talk about how they are all really PO'd at Donald Trump. And they are, as part of that discussion, the topic has come up as to whether it makes sense for them to continue to host American military bases on their soil. Oman's not even a part of that. If I were the leader of Oman, I would say, you know what? Clearly you're not happy with us. And that's the last thing we want. We really were trying to help you out and bring this to an end. But clearly you would feel better if somebody else was doing the negotiating. So, you know, good luck with that. We're out. And then Oman reaches out to Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and Bahrain, and says, guys, next time you all meet, we want to be a part of that. We want to be a part of that discussion. This man has a gift for going easy on our enemies and alienating our allies. Is scaling back the war exercises, the military exercises that we were supposed to do with South Korea, because we're mad at them because they didn't jump and send people to join our Iran war. And so we're making nice with North Korea. North Korea has nuclear weapons. North Korea is one of the worst dictatorships in the world. They treat their people very, very poorly. But we are, again, in another part of the world, alienating an ally so we can suck up to somebody who has no loyalty to us and no reason to do anything nice for us. Okay. That was a little more than I intended to say about the Iran war. I do want to remind you that the first hour of the show, Monday through Thursday, we take your calls and read your texts. 773-763-9278. 773-763-WCPT, if that's easier to remember. Matt is on the phone lines back at the studio, but you can, as you know, also use that number to text me. And those texts come directly to a screen, or I can see them and read them and enjoy them myself. So 773-763-9278. Matt Byrne is there to answer the phone lines and get those calls stacking up like planes over O'Hare. One other thing that's kind of weird and is, again, Trump-related, as it seems most things are these days, apparently Jon Ossoff really got under Donald Trump's skin with a crack about Natalie Harp. Yeah. Jon Ossoff was giving a speech. He is, by the way, running to retain a Senate seat in Georgia. And Sunday, in a speech, Jon Ossoff said about Trump, he doesn't want to do the job. He wants to build his ballroom and travel with Natalie on their apparently defenseless flying palace gifted by the Emir of Qatar. But even though he has excoriated Trump about the Iran war, how he's goosing him about the Qatari jet, which, by the way, had to be abandoned because apparently it can't defend itself very well, and the ballroom that the courts refused to allow to continue. But what stood out to Donald Trump was mentioning Natalie Harp. Remember when we had this whole decoy plane when Trump was leaving the NATO meeting in Turkey and the fancy new Qatari jet was flown over to Germany? Donald Trump said, "Oh, it's such a great plane. I wanted to make sure all the military people got a chance to see it. I'm going to be on an older Air Force One that has more defensive capabilities." Well, he didn't say that, but that was what was released. And then Washington Post, got to hand it to you. Keep doing great work until Bezos finally stomps you into the ground like a bug. But Washington Post reported that Trump wasn't on the plane. He got on that Air Force One jet in Turkey, waved to everybody, went to the front of the plane, and along with Natalie Harp, Dan Schiavino, and Walt Nuda, the four of them got into a catering container. Yes, a catering container that was sealed up and put on a truck and driven over to a military jet, where it was very quietly loaded onto that jet. And just like Jack in the Box, they open it up and out pops Trump and Natalie and Walt and Dan. And there's been reporting that the reason Caroline Leavitt quit her job so abruptly is that the brand new mother of a new baby, her second child, was left by Trump on the decoy plane. Now, the warning that there was an assassination attempt because somebody had what was believed to be a shoulder missile launcher, that's what the Iranians were going to use. Well, that apparently came from Israel, and there's a lot of people in the government who think it was never really true. Our own intelligence agencies weren't able to verify it. But, you know, when somebody says the president's going to get shot out of the sky, you ignore it at your peril. But reporting since then has speculated that Israel wanted Donald Trump to think that Iran really, really was trying to kill him so that he would be more likely to continue his military actions against Iran. It was a ploy. It has been widely reported that it was a ploy on Israel's part to try to get Trump to stay mad at Iran. So Caroline Leavitt left behind, and then she decides that maybe it's time for her to spend more time with her family. And Natalie Harp, who is pretty much, it seems, with Donald Trump 24/7, she made it into the container. And Trump apparently is very, very, very sensitive about that. Stephen Chung, who is part of the White House communications team, really, really went after John Ossoff for mentioning Natalie's name. And when Trump was asked about what Ossoff said, he referred to Ossoff as Pee Wee Herman. Don't ask me. He likes to make up names for everybody, you know, Sleepy Joe. I don't know how John Ossoff becomes Pee Wee Herman, but whatever. Whatever. So the Donald is not happy. There was a CNN reporter, I think it's Kristen, her last name is Holmes, who said to him, you know, John Ossoff said this, what's your response? And like he does a lot of times, especially with CNN women, he told her to be quiet. He told her that she worked for fake news and basically just went after her personally, like he does with Caitlin Collins. When a high-ranking political person makes a comment about another high-ranking political person, it is absolutely fair game on a reporter's part to ask one about the other. But Donald Trump does not want Natalie's name in our mouths. So just remember that if you have a chance to meet Donald Trump. You can talk to him about, well, I was going to say anything, but that's not really true. You can't really talk to him about anything. You can talk to him about a couple of things. Like talk to him about his ballroom. But don't talk to him about Natalie. Like if you're ever in Mar-a-Lago and he comes up to you, you're not going to say, "Hey, where's Natalie Harp? I'd love to meet her." He will not be happy with you. He does not want Natalie Harp to be the focus of attention, which, of course, is why a lot of people are saying, continue to keep talking about it, please. John Ossoff actually talked about the hurt feelings coming out of the White House because of things he has said. We have some sound of that. Listen to John Ossoff.
This is why you saw the kind of furious response from the White House to my criticism over the weekend, is because we're dealing with a president who has utterly and undeniably failed at his most core and central obligation as commander-in-chief. They lied us into war. And by the way, no one cares about their hurt feelings in the West Wing. They lied us into a war that they don't know how to end, and they don't know how to win. They have treated the lives of our service members as pawns in a geopolitical game in which they are in way over their head. And this debacle, this fiasco, this fundamental failure of the basic obligations of the commander-in-chief is something that will define Donald Trump's life, presidency, and legacy for all time. And they know that, and that's why they're lashing out in this way.
The Wall Street Journal, of course, that bastion of liberal democracy, she said that's tongue-in-cheek, is framing this whole Ossoff Trump thing as John Ossoff's effort to take his statewide Senate candidacy national. By mentioning Natalie Harp, he wants to get national attention. And in other words, what does that mean? He wouldn't be talking about Natalie Harp? He's trying to lay the groundwork for a presidential run in 2028? You know, Georgia's a weird state. It's kind of kooky, like, frankly, I feel Wisconsin is. You just can't count on it. Somebody was asking me today about Ossoff looking good for 2028. And I said, you know what? Let's not even talk about that till he wins his Senate seat. And they were like, well, isn't he ahead? This is Georgia, my friends. They came close to, there were too many votes for Herschel Walker, a man who clearly has severe mental and emotional problems. And there were a lot of people in Georgia who voted for him. So in Georgia, we take literally nothing for granted, because that's a kooky state. And so John Ossoff, talk to me about 2028 after Ossoff wins his Senate re-election effort in Georgia, preferably in a really, really, really big way. One other thing I want to get to that isn't kind of topical, isn't exactly the news of the day, but Chris Beery and I yesterday were talking about Hakeem Jeffries, and we were talking about how there is this energy beginning in the Democratic Party, that people want change, and whether or not you believe in democratic socialists or not, many of the elections that are happening across the country are change elections. Incumbents who were previously thought to be secure, Dan Goldman in New York, didn't win his re-election effort. A lot of people said, oh, he's a corporate Democrat. He's taken too much corporate money. And man, if you take money from AIPAC, you might as well just shoot yourself in the foot. That has become so unpopular. Anyway, we were talking about Hakeem Jeffries and whether or not he is the right man for the moment. We definitely know Chuck Schumer isn't. There's reporting today, too, that Schumer is quite likely out as the leader of the Democrats in the Senate. Whether or not the Democrats become a majority, there are enough people running from the Democratic Party to win Senate seats who are willing to say that they will not vote to support Chuck Schumer as their leader. If Chuck Schumer is smart, he will just retire at the end of this term. Because the way things look right now, not only will he not be the leader of the Democrats, I would have to say there's a reasonable chance he might not win re-election. You know, better to go out on top, I guess. On Sunday, Ro Khanna was on Meet the Press, and he was talking about Hakeem Jeffries. Hakeem Jeffries, again, tone deaf, came out recently and said that he was not a supporter of Medicare for all. I don't know. He was apparently the hand-picked guy by Nancy Pelosi to be the Democratic leader in the Congress. But whether or not he was the right man for the moment then, he certainly is not the right man for the moment now. Chris and I were talking yesterday about he was asked something and he gave this really sort of long-winded kind of academic, deep in the weeds kind of answer. And, Chris and I were both journalists. In journalists, you learn what's effective communication and what's not. And Chris kept saying he could have said this. He could have said, about democratic socialists. Well, they bring such an incredible energy, and I'm so glad we have that incredible energy in the Democratic Party. And, we're a big tent and we welcome everybody. Instead, he went on this long-winded academic response. Oh, Hakeem, I'm not saying he's a bad guy. I'm just saying he is not the right man for where we are now. Anyway, Ro Khanna was on with Kristen Welker on Meet the Press on Sunday, and he talked about Hakeem Jeffries saying that he is not for Medicare for all. Listen to what Representative Ro Khanna had to say.
Medicare for all is arguably the most important priority. It would save money and it would save lives. Look, there was just a Yale study that came out. It would save $1 trillion in terms of costs, in terms of health care. We know that the average income of workers is 43%. It's the lowest it's ever been since 1929. One of the reasons is because of exploding health insurance. Medicare for all would increase wages.
Were you disappointed to hear Leader Jeffrey say at this point in time he says he wouldn't vote for Medicare for all?
Well, look, I respect the difference, but I will say this. It needs to have a vote on the House floor. The majority of the House Democrats are going to support it. It is one of the most important policies if you actually believe in saving lives and in helping increase wages for working class Americans. You talk to folks and they'll say the biggest thing that pushes me into bankruptcy is if someone gets cancer and I can't afford the bills. And even people who have insurance, look at how many premiums have been increasing. This would save money for ordinary Americans and it would increase their wages. It's the single biggest roadblock in our economic system, hurting working families.
You see those things on social media, like tell me you like this movie without telling me you like this movie, and you're supposed to post a phrase or a picture. Tell me you don't support Hakeem Jeffries and his ideas without coming out and saying you don't support Hakeem Jeffries. That's what Ro Khanna just did. It's got to come to a vote. And, most Democrats would vote for it. And this is why, and it will save money, and it'll do this. So it needs to come for a vote, and most Democrats will vote for it. Most Democrats will vote for it. But Hakeem Jeffries, who's supposedly the leader of the Democrats in Congress, is against it. Sort of seems like we're saying quietly Hakeem Jeffries is out of step with the Democratic Party as it exists today? Could that be what we just heard? Yes, 1,000 times yes. 773-763-9278. Matt Byrne is in the studio today, and he is eager to talk to you on the telephone so he can take down your name and maybe where you live and what you want to talk about and get that information to me so you and I can have a conversation. We are going to spend another half hour talking about the news of the day and, frankly, whatever else you want to talk about. I am going to take a break and catch up on all of your texts. We'll be back right after this.
Want to join the conversation?
I'm going to say exactly what I think here.
Got something to say?
Everyone needs to hear what I got to say.
Call Joan now at 773-763-9278 and join the conversation. Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820.
Gotten some very interesting texts today. Hi, Joan. Have you noticed when we say war, we seldom talk about soldiers, casualties, innocent victims. We talk about the price of gas, Wall Street, and etc. Thomas, you are absolutely correct. I can't imagine what I would be feeling if I were the parent of somebody deployed to the Middle East right now. People who join the military, yes, they know what they sign up for. They agree that if the situation warrants it, they will give their lives for this country. But you would like to think that you have a commander-in-chief who understands that sacrifice and he doesn't take that commitment lightly. I get the feeling that the president we have now just views our military as just pieces on a checkerboard. They're not real people. You know, if they get hurt, they get hurt. But he's a big picture guy. Another texter wrote in, meaning about Trump, he is alienating our allies. It is not a mistake. It is the plan of an agent of Putin. John, I don't know if he's a full-fledged agent of Putin. I can't imagine Putin's actually paying him. But I can't imagine Vladimir Putin would want anybody else in the White House right now. Which is also why I don't think that Iran is really seriously going to try to assassinate him. Because they've got him over a barrel, but not to make an oil reference, but I made an oil reference. And they know it. And he knows it. Why would they get rid of him and take the chance that somebody with an actual brain, somebody who can think strategically, somebody who might not be as easy to manipulate would be in that office? That's crazy talk. That's crazy talk. One more text before we go to the phone lines. I'm happy to see that the Trump administration compares Ossoff to Obama and Biden. Clearly, they're paying attention, and we need another Obama. I see that in Ossoff in 2028. I believe he's grooming himself to run for president, and I will vote for him. I'm not saying that he wouldn't make a great candidate. I am saying that first, he's got to win his Senate seat. If something unbelievable upsets the apple cart, and this is politics, kids, you know that song, Anything Can Happen? I swear it was made for political campaigns. If he doesn't win his Senate seat, then nobody will be talking about John Ossoff for anything bigger or better. Okay, let's go to Jim, who's on the line from Chicago. Hey, Jim, how are you?
Hi, Joan. How are you? Tuesday afternoon by the movie.
It's Bad Attitude Tuesday. Don't you push me, mister.
Yeah, I was going to say they've got 15 ICE protesters under various charges up in Minnesota, very serious charges. And the way they were gleaned was by the secret police of ICE dressing as pedestrians, going to meetings with listening devices and facial recognition devices, and to union meetings, church meetings. And that's how they glean these charges. And they're all serious charges. But my point is this is a tactic used by North Korea, Russia, Stalin. You have people, you think they dressed up as protesters. They came as protesters, so you didn't know who the hell was who. So the point is they've got listening devices and face recognition devices with them, and they're recording every word you're saying, and they're turning it over to the DOJ. And I know that television, as of yesterday, is an ancient object now, but Todd Toddy was on one of the shows, and he said, well, can you separate yourself from, just be an independent agent of the DOJ? Well, I can't say that because in my mind, I'm just surmising what he said. In my mind, Trump is the government. So whatever he says goes.
Okay. Well, we all knew he was going to do it. The question was, how is he going to justify it? I will do everything in my power for the government. And Trump is the government. That's beautiful, Jim. That is beautiful.
Yeah, that's exactly. Well, he said it with a straight face, and he really meant it. I mean, you can tell he meant it from his tips of his toes to the top of his head. But that is not the government that I recognize, and I don't recognize secret agents. If I thought if I thought I was being recorded and had a face recognition device, and I found out about it, God help the guy or woman or whoever is going to do it. God help him. That's all I have to say. Anyway, Joan, the reason I said Tuesday afternoon, did you ever hear the song by the Moody Blues, Tuesday Afternoon?
Yep. Yes.
That's a beautiful song. Anyway, thank you, Joan. Have a good show.
Well, thank you, Jim. And yes, that song is much too nice to play on Bad Attitude Tuesday, because whatever else happens on Tuesday, it's bad. Bad attitude. It is the beginning of the week, so you've got the whole rest of the week to work. You don't have that glow that kind of floats you through Monday. You have this stark realization that it is the beginning of the week and you have nothing but to face the rest of it. How is anybody supposed to have a good attitude looking at that? Want to share a couple more texts with you regarding Natalie Harp. More waste, grift, and distraction from the lawless regime. Meanwhile, credible witnesses of Trump and Epstein are stonewalled, and the Epstein class is protected at a cost to us, just like everything from this corrupt administration. Yes, Epstein files, and there's been another texter to remind me, Epstein files, Epstein files, Epstein files. The effort being made by Public Integrity and Katie Fang, former MS Now host, to bring what was passed by Congress in December, the Epstein Files Transparency Act, was by December 31st. Everything was supposed to be released. And the only thing that was supposed to be redacted were the names of the victims and identifying information about them, like where they live or something like that. And it hasn't happened. And Katie Fang and the activists behind her have gone to court, and they've said to the judge, you know, we're journalists, and this decision hurts us. And so we want you to enforce it. And the judge agreed. And Todd Blanche has been tap dancing as fast as he can to try to stay ahead of the judge and his ruling. But they're not giving up. They are matching them filing for filing. They are going to be relentless. We are going to get to more of your calls when we come right back after a break.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Every weekday afternoon from 2 to 5 p.m. on WCPT 820.
Monday through Thursday for the first hour, we take your calls. We read your texts. It is you and me talking about the news of the day. Let's go to Whiting, Indiana, where Marty's on the line. Hey, Marty, thanks for the call.
Yes, Joan, first time calling.
Oh, I'm so glad. Thanks for calling in.
I've been listening off and on for 4 or 5 months, but I feel compelled to call in after what I found out from Stephanie Miller Friday morning about the 2 sailors. One tried to commit suicide. The other one jumped off the ship. But I read the Tribune every morning, Joan. Can you expand a little bit more on that? Because there's nothing in the Tribune. But also my dad is a Marine. My dad fought in Korea, got shot twice, and he fought for our country. I know my dad, along with other men and women that are in the military, would be turning over in their graves if they knew what was going on with our military right now. But yeah, my question is, can you expand a little bit more? Because that's all I've heard from Stephanie Miller was that one of our sailors tried to commit suicide.
Well, here's what I know. The USS Abraham Lincoln and what's called its carrier group, which means it's the aircraft carrier, but there are other ships, destroyers and whatnot. It forms a group, and they were sent to the Middle East. They were clearly there to intimidate Iran, and their deployment was supposed to be up in May. And I don't know what a regular deployment is, but it's months and months. And in May, they were expected to be relieved so that they could go home. And one of the other problems with being deployed like that to the Middle East is that there's no place where a ship can put in and give people shore leave. There's really not a lot of places where they can go ashore and enjoy some restaurants and some music or something. That's not existent. So not only were they bound to the ship, but in May, when they were supposed to be replaced by another carrier group, Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth, of course, not having any idea what it's like to live and work aboard a ship like that, they just said, we're extending your deployment. So they were supposed to go home in May. They didn't go home in May. They didn't go home in June. They didn't go home in July. And now we're in August. And it has been reported that they're having shortages of food. Apparently, there's a CENTCOM place, I don't know if it's on Bahrain or somewhere, where, like care packages from home and resupply is supposed to come to these ships. And those that area was bombed. So even though the call went out early in the deployment for families to send care packages, and I'm not talking like chocolate chip cookies, I'm talking like clean socks and deodorant and toothpaste, the real basics here. Families, the military folks were told to reach out to their families and have them start sending care packages. The care packages didn't get to them. The regular resupply was damaged. And there was reports that food was in short supply. I have not seen this myself. There were some reports that some of the food was rotten. People reported seeing food that supposedly had maggots in it. And up until recently, when they went to eat to the cafeteria, instead of being allowed to pick their own food and how much they wanted, they were limited. They would go through the line and somebody would put food. They were being rationed. They would put food on their plate. And however much you got, that's what you got, and that's what you ate. So it was a really difficult scene all around. And I don't know if the USS Abraham Lincoln is built like the USS Kennedy that I was on, but that you see that long flight deck on top. You're not allowed to go up there unless you have business being up there. You're not allowed to go up there. A deck or two down, there's like a big, I don't know, it's an opening. It's much bigger than a window. It's a wide opening lower down. But this isn't something where I'm off duty. I'm getting a little stir crazy. I think I'll, get some fresh air. Well, maybe you will and maybe you won't. And the problems kept multiplying, and the strain on somebody's mental health. Those ships, they're not designed to be stimulating. Everything is metal. Everything is gray. And there were sailors, at least 3 sailors that we know of, attempted self-harm, and one of the 3 jumped off the ship. And and when families got wind of this, they started talking to the Military Times, anonymously, of course, because they don't want their loved ones to get in trouble. Though the woman whose husband jumped off the ship did talk to them, and she said she was terrified that, he loved his career, he loved being in the Navy, and because of what he did, she was terrified that he would get a dishonorable discharge and that would just destroy him further. So, when the Military Times started reporting this and other people picked up on the reporting, all of a sudden, the announcement was made that the USS George Washington Carrier Group was going to be sent to relieve the Abraham Lincoln. Though Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump both say there weren't any problems, that basically people reporting that there were problems were lying, absolutely lying. There's no problems whatsoever. It's all exaggeration. It's all lies. But, you know, we are going to send another carrier group to relieve them. Why? If there's no problem, why? Donald Trump, Mr. Empathy, Mr. Sensitive, even said that he thought that they should be deployed longer, that they hadn't served long enough. The guy who dodged military service on multiple occasions, the guy who admitted telling, I think it was Don Jr., that if he ever joined the military, which apparently Don Jr. actually considered at one point early in his life, that Donald Trump would disown him. That's what Donald Trump thinks. That's what Donald Trump thinks about the military. So that's everything that I've read so far. More continues to come out all the time. And I imagine once these sailors are going to be rotated home and they start sharing more with their families, there will be follow-up reporting. However bad we think it is, I'm guessing it's probably worse. So, somebody else who couldn't stay on the line was asking Matt to ask me about more information on the Caroline Leavitt story. You know, if you read her departure, if you read about it in the Wall Street Journal, oh my God, it makes you want to puke. Caroline Leavitt, the most amazing, fabulous girl, the youngest. Oh my God, she's like does it all, and she's done this and she's done that, and it went on and on. And I really, by the time I got 2/3 of the way through, I thought, oh my God, this is just a press release. The Wall Street Journal is just reprinting a press release. Oh, you know, she told Susie Wiles and Donald Trump more than a week before she announced it publicly that she'd be leaving. And they both understood completely, and they supported her decision to go home and be with her family. But Mike from Illinois wanted to know what were the other sources of this story. Well, one of them is MSN. MSN.com. Quote, new footage shows Caroline Leavitt in a tense exchange with Donald Trump and Natalie Harp just hours before she announced she was stepping down as the White House press secretary. And why, you know, if you want to stay home and be with your kids, hey, I support that 100%. But I will just tell you the way it usually works. Speaking from personal experience, when you have the baby, you stay home with the baby, and that's when you start thinking, I don't want to go back to work. I want to stay home and raise this kid. And maybe it doesn't happen with every woman, but the vast majority of women make that decision while they're still home, and they reach out to the boss and say, you know what? Ain't coming back. Let's figure this out. Instead, there was reporting that when it came time for Caroline Leavitt to deliver, people at the White House, and I assume this must mean Susie Wiles, said to Caroline Leavitt, take a month. You know, you're having your second kid. Take a month to be home before you come back. And Caroline Leavitt, multiple sources have reported, answered that with no. I'm taking 10 days off, and then I'm going to be back at work. She's already had a kid, so she knows what those feelings are going to be. She knows what's coming, and she also knows that she is going to be back in the saddle in 10 days. Okay. And then suddenly, after this trip home on Air Force One, suddenly then she's like, you know what? I'm going to go home and stay with my kids. And while, you know, the Wall Street Journal, oh, she told Donald Trump a week before she made the announcement, and she told Susie Wiles, and everybody was really happy for her. The reporting that came out after she quit was that Donald Trump was blindsided by it. Blindsided. Had not known it was coming. She had not had a conversation with him. He had not given his blessing. He was blindsided because you know darn well that if she'd have told him ahead of time that she was not coming back, by the time she made the public announcement, they would have had a replacement. They would have said, oh, we love her. We're so glad she's made a decision that she thinks is best for her. And our new press secretary is da-da-da-da-da. Instead, the reporting is that Donald Trump was blindsided, that he was caught flat-footed, et cetera, and so forth. So MSN saying that she had a very heated, tense exchange with Donald Trump and Natalie Harp just hours before she made the announcement that she was stepping down. Hope that gives you a little more context, Mike. All you have to do is Google Levitt Harp, and a number of sources on this story come up. Let's go back to Chicago on the phone lines. Ron is on the line. Hey, Ron, how are you?
Very good. When we see Natalie Harp standing next to Trump, are we supposed to think she is a Secret Service agent?
Oh, maybe that. Does she have an earpiece? I didn't see. Maybe she has an earpiece.
Yeah, underneath all the blonde hair, I'm sure there is.
But you know what, Ron? Because if you're Secret Service and you're protecting a high-value target, have you ever watched them? They never actually look at the person they're supposed to be protecting. They look everywhere else, and their eyes are like on a swivel. You know, does anybody stand out? Is anybody acting weirdly? Does anybody look like they might pose a danger? They don't turn around and look at Donald Trump. Natalie Harp never takes her eyes off of Donald Trump. So if she's Secret Service, she's a really bad one.
Yeah, needs more training. And Trump said yesterday that everything aboard the Abraham Lincoln is beautiful. They have
so beautiful that they really should stay out there, don't you think?
Yeah, another at least another 3 months. And that they got broken pipes, the washing machines are not working, toilets are not working, everything.
Yeah, I didn't get into the toilets. I just can only talk about toilets for so much, for so lengthy. I don't even want to think about what's going on with those toilets.
No, good idea. All right, thank you. All right.
Thank you, Ron. Always a pleasure. Okay, we are coming up on the news. I fell behind in the texts, and I apologize. But I will continue to read your texts when we break for news and try to answer your questions and comments. If I can't do it on air, I will try to send you a little reply. I don't type very fast, though. That's why, even though I try to read everything, I don't always write a reply to you. Because by the time I write a reply to one person, I've fallen behind with the next 6 texts. But that's a me problem. That's not a you problem, okay? I take responsibility for that. Do you feel like I'm losing it? It is Bad Attitude Tuesday. Maybe I'm having a mental health crisis. That happens, you know. It happens with me. I'm losing it. We're going to take a break for news. Matt Byrne back in the studio. You know, if I go completely bat poop crazy, you're going to finish the show, Matt. I just want you to be ready for that, okay? He laughs. He thinks I'm joking. Okay, we are going to take a break for news. When we come back, we're going to talk to Julie Roginski. Remember we spoke to her a while back? She and Gretchen Carlson formed a group called Lift Our Voices. She writes a newsletter called Salty Politics, which I think is great. But she and Gretchen, remember Gretchen Carlson, who accused Roger Ailes of sexual harassment and really opened the floodgates at Fox? Man, oh man, it's hard to be the first. Julie Roginski is going to be joining us when we come right back. We are going to take a break for news, and I am going to try desperately to catch up on the texts I have fallen behind. See you on the other side of the news.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Oh, Bad Attitude Tuesday continues. You know, when Julie Roginski is the guest, we are scheduled to take a conversation with, a little journey. We've got her? Matt? Oh, good. We were having some technical problems in the break, and I didn't think Julie was going to be there. But Matt Byrne has come through, ladies and gentlemen, and so has Julie Roginski. Julie, how are you today?
Hello.
Hi, Julie. Can you hear me? Julie, can you hear me? It's Joan Esposito. Matt, you sort of got Julie, but you sort of didn't. It appears to be a one-way connection. Pardon me? Oh, okay. All righty. Again, the technical problems. What day would you expect them to show up? Bad Attitude Tuesday. Even our computers are having a bad day. Okay, well then, let's go back to the news, because I know you're going to find this hard to believe, but there was stuff I wanted to talk about that I didn't get to. Why is that? Because you don't know how to stop talking, Joan. Well, if you're going to be that way about it. Okay, I wanted to share with you, we were talking about the USS Lincoln and the conditions there, and all about what is going on in Iran and the effort to have a new memorandum of understanding. I said that in my announcer voice, memorandum of understanding. So let's go to some things that Representative Jason Crow, Democrat from Colorado, remember, he was one of the people that joined in that video that said, we're former military, and we want to remind you that you not only don't have to obey an illegal order, but you really can't obey an illegal order. Well, he was on MS Now talking to Yvonne Hilliard. He was filling in for Chris Hayes. And one of the things that he talked about was this memorandum of understanding with Iran and everything about the USS Lincoln. Let's listen to Representative Jason Crow on Iran.
Congressman, when we look at the questionable existence of talks with Iran, even at this point, the 60-day ceasefire agreement, there were serious questions for literally all 60 days about whether it would lead to anything. And we now have Iran signaling a new possible offensive. Based off the intelligence that you're able to share, where do you foresee the war going? And is there an off-ramp that you'd urge the White House to take at this point?
Well, there were never really questions in my mind about how this was going to play out. From the very first week of this war, I knew we would be in this position. In this farce of a 60-day MOU, that entire peace agreement was a farce from the very beginning. There was no intelligence to support it. There was no military leverage to support it. There was no strategy to support it. What Donald Trump wanted to do, and I want to be super clear about this, that entire agreement in that signing ceremony in Versailles, that was all a scripted, made-for-TV moment to try to present some image that Donald Trump knew what he was doing and he was winning. When in effect, the reality of it was very different. And we see that reality now playing out with our service members. And I also want to make something else really clear here. When Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth and others say, our service members are complaining, it's not really true, it's not really fake news, and other people getting up and saying, of course our service members have to suffer some adversity. There's a really big difference. I was an Army Ranger and a paratrooper. I went to Iraq and Afghanistan. And yes, it is true our service members can suffer adversity and are trained to do tough things. That's what the training is designed to do. But it's designed to do, they are designed to do tough things when it's necessary, when they have to do that for the mission. Not when it's because of incompetence, not when it's because of poor planning, not when it's unnecessary, and not for these prolonged periods of time that are now getting to the morale and welfare and the mental wellness of our troops. It's a very different situation, and this is because of their incompetency.
That was Jason Crow, former military guy himself, former Army captain and Army Ranger, explaining to people what military members can be expected to do, and also the way they should be treated when it is not an exceptional situation. Okay, there are rumors that Julie can now hear me. Julie Roginski, are you there?
I am.
Yay!
Sorry about that.
Hey, you know what?
Before.
Yes, we had gremlins. We're switching to new technology, which is always a very exciting time. Will it work? Will it not work? Okay. So how have you been?
I've been great. How about you?
Well, up until a few moments ago when we couldn't get you on the radio, I thought I was great. But, you know, I don't know if you realize this, but it is Bad Attitude Tuesday. And I'm sorry that you're here on this day because it is the day of the week when I feel like I'm particularly cranky, Julie.
Well, it's not, you're already 2 days into the work week and the weekend seems very far away. So I could see why Tuesdays would make it cranky.
When we were speaking before, you were explaining about this group that you and Gretchen Carlson started in 2021, and that the two of you, your organization, Lift Our Voices, didn't just, try to publicize a problem. You actually helped to write legislation that got passed. For those folks who weren't with us, that other conversation, give us a thumbnail sketch of Lift Our Voices.
Sure. Number 21, we are already well into what we're doing, but our whole purpose is to get rid of silencing mechanisms in the workplace, things like forced arbitration and NDAs. I don't know if most people realize, but most people listening today, if you have a job, chances are you're bound by forced arbitration. 82% of all American workers are, which means that if you have something bad happen to you at work, you can't sue. You have to go to the secret chamber of arbitration, which is awful. So we decided to change the law there. And believe it or not, in the most hyper-partisan time in our lives, we were able to do that. And President Biden signed the Ending Forced Arbitration for Sexual Assault and Sexual Harassment Act, which means that you no longer have to go to arbitration if you were sexually harassed or assaulted. And then once we got that done, we immediately moved to do something similar for non-disclosure agreements, and we passed the Speak Out Act, which gets rid of NDAs for sexual misconduct, pre-dispute NDAs for sexual misconduct. So that means if you are bound by an NDA on the first day of work and something bad happens to you, you get harassed or assaulted at work, you no longer have to stay quiet prior to suing.
Recently NDAs have been in the news because it's been reported that some of the people, particularly the 14-year-old who accused Donald Trump of assaulting her at one of Epstein's properties, that some of them had negotiated settlements and as a part of those settlements had signed NDAs. So, even though there were quite a number of Epstein survivors who came out and spoke publicly and spoke to Congress, it is believed that there are hundreds, if not more than 1,000 more. And some of them with the most dangerous, I suppose you would say, stories are bound by NDAs. It would seem, Julie, that in a situation like that how do you break an NDA? Like if let's say you're 14, by the time you're 18, you say, I'm going to go public with this. They give you $100,000 or whatever, and as a part of that deal, you sign a non-disclosure agreement. But this is something that affects not just a private situation, not just even a corporate situation, but people who are in politics, people who are in positions of power. Is there any way in a situation where the stakes are really high to break an NDA? Or do you just have to violate it and then hope that your case is strong enough when you go to court that you won't be punished?
I mean, that's a great question. First of all, if you're 14 and you sign an NDA, the question is, who signed that NDA for you? Because you are not old enough to get into any kind of legal agreement that's binding. Unfortunately, the law actually allows you to do that in certain states, most states actually, and a law was passed in Texas recently to prevent that from happening. It's on the Hill now. It's a federal law, which hopefully will be passed soon.
That would prevent what or allow what?
Well, it would allow you to, it would basically say that NDAs signed by minor children are no longer, it's called Trey's Law, and it's an NDA that effectively it would say that if you were bound by an NDA as a child, you no longer, and you were sexually assaulted or harassed, you would not be bound by it. Because that we bind people to these agreements when they're children and then expect them to live this way. It's actually, this law was inspired by a young man who was raped at a Christian camp in Missouri. I forgot the name of the camp. I think it's Kinnicook, but I might be mispronouncing that name. And he ultimately had to live with this horror for the rest of his life, and ended up taking his life very sadly because of the fact that he couldn't speak out about something that had happened to him as a child. He was, I think, about the same age as these girls allegedly were. And I think he was about maybe, 9, 10, somewhere in that area, maybe even as old as 12 or 13. And so, he lived with that for 15 years and ultimately couldn't live with it anymore. I don't think parents realize when they sign these agreements on behalf of children what they're subjecting their children to, which is a lifetime of silence.
Yeah.
And if happens to those children, what are you doing here? I mean, you're completely messing. I mean, as it is, you're messing with their life by having been assaulted, but now you're also adding stuff. I can't talk anything about it.
Okay,
sure
Julie, your signal is really wobbly and you're really cutting out a lot. I'm going to take a break. We need to take anyway, and maybe Matt can reconnect with you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, but you're kind of cutting in and out. So we're going to take a break. Matt, please reconnect with Julie, and we'll be back with more after this.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I am not giving up on Julie Roginski. We are going to make her sit there and talk to us till we get the signal right, because I'm sure Julie would rather talk to us than do anything else that she has on her schedule today. Okay, Julie, you're back.
Very
Matt
happy to
says
talk to you.
The connection is really good. So let's jump forward a little bit. I want to talk about the Ending Forced Arbitration of Sexual Assault and Sexual Harassment Act and the Speak Out Act. Those are the ones that I don't believe have been, they have bipartisan support, but I don't believe they've been passed by both houses, have they?
No, they did. Those are the ones that were passed and signed into law in 2022 by President Biden. There's another law that we're working on right now. It's called the Protecting Older Americans Act.
Yay! I'm an older American, Julie. Thank you for that.
You know what's sad? And if you're over 40, legally, you're older American.
And the worst part is, if you're pregnant at 35, it's a geriatric pregnancy.
Oh, I know. I was pregnant at 39, so I know. I had a very geriatric pregnancy. But yes, if you are 40 or over, this impacts you, because if you were fired or otherwise discriminated against based on your age, which is 40 or over, you would be impacted by the Protecting Older Americans Act, which would make sure that you would not be shoved into the secret chamber of arbitration and could actually have your day in court if, in fact, you were discriminated against based on age. So I think this is a really important law. I hope that we could get enough Republicans on the Hill to move it. And hopefully this will become law, much like our Ending Forced Arbitration for Sexual Assault and Sexual Harassment Act became law.
Well, and these kinds of laws seem to be more and more important as protections that we thought in place. Americans with Disability Act, I'm looking at you. Voting Rights Act, I'm looking at you. Certain protections that we thought we had already voted into law appear to be going away in front of our very eyes.
That we all took for granted. I mean, look at Roe versus Wade. Took for granted because they've been around. Were the law of the land, and so from every facet, whether it's that or just the Voting Rights Act or any of these laws that have been around, Voting Rights Act, has been on longer than I've been alive, and yet now it's effectively gutted and gone.
And that's what, that's the way the Supreme Court seems to be working now. There's something that's been passed. It's the law of the land. It's been the law of the land for a while. And instead of just saying, oh, it's a bad law, we're getting rid of it, it's a good law, but this part of it's wrong. Okay, so we're going to invalidate that part. And you know what? Now that we think about it, this part of the law isn't really right either. And so many states that have passed a right to abortion, even as part of their state constitutions, are seeing their state legislatures do the same thing. Well, yeah, that's mostly okay, but this one little part of it, these two sentences, that's not really right. So we're going to say that's invalid. And then, you know what? Now that we think about it, these first three sentences, they don't look very good either. They're one of the ways that conservatives are getting rid of some of this legislation is piecemeal, taking a bite here and a bite there. So, people like you are going to be constantly having to come up with new laws.
Well, and it's awful because the reality is it's obviously very hard to pass the laws, but it's even harder to change culture. And to the extent that we have people who have worked their entire lives to achieve these outcomes, what I respect tremendously about the Republican Party and think Democrats should take a page out of is that they have had a plan since the 1970s, since basically Roe versus Wade was passed, to get rid of abortion. And they succeeded. And they succeeded in getting rid of Roe versus Wade. And when you have people like John Roberts, who worked back in 1983 or 1984 in the Reagan administration to oppose the Voting Rights Act, and then decades later became the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and then even decades after that, was able to finally accomplish something that he started working on 40 years ago. That tells you how good they are at this. And I remember, I used to be the token Democrat at Fox News a long time ago, and I had conversations with a number of Republicans who said to me, we don't care about anything other than the Supreme Court. That's all we care about. They had a plan from day one to accomplish what they wanted to accomplish, and they had the patience to get it done. And Democrats don't think that way. Democrats are like, Merrick Garland would make a good Supreme Court justice because we think we can get Republican votes for him. Mm-hmm. They don't care about that. They care about their ideology. All they care about is where these people were before they got to the court, what kind of issues they worked on, whether it's Brett Kavanaugh in the Bush administration or John Roberts in the Reagan administration. And ultimately, they decided that they were going to put people on the court who were able to accomplish the very goals that they've been trying to get accomplished for decades, for longer than many of us have been alive.
Man, one thing that you said that is so true is that Republicans have been willing to play the long game. They may not get what they want in the next 5 years, maybe not even the next 10 years, but they continued to work toward a goal. And you're absolutely right. They got there. I read shortly after he was named to the Supreme Court, a couple of New York Times reporters wrote like a biography of Brett Kavanaugh. And I was astounded to realize that he almost didn't get nominated to be a Supreme Court justice because conservatives thought he was too liberal. They were worried that he would turn out to be a sheep in wolf's clothing, that he was too liberal. And he had to really work really hard to get support to overcome that prejudice, which I thought was just jaw-dropping.
Yeah, and the Federalist Society is just one check mark that they look at for ideology, but it's more than that. They really go into the bios and the backgrounds of what these potential justices, and not just justices, but also all federal judges on every level, where they worked and what their job was. And I keep going back to John Roberts. Everybody kept saying, John Roberts is, kind of the moderate wing of the right wing justices on the court. And the reality is that John Roberts had worked to eradicate the Voting Rights Act going back to the Reagan administration. This is no moderate. No. And, it's not a coincidence that you have a bunch of justices who are Catholic on the court. It's not, this is not a knock at all on Catholicism, and I don't mean it that way, but, they picked them out of Catholic schools because they were more prone to being anti-choice for religious reasons. And that's something that you can't really ask somebody about. And they would say, we're going to support precedent. We're going to respect precedent. As Justice Alito said to Susan Collins and as Brett Kavanaugh said, of course they weren't going to respect precedents because, I remember when Justice Alito was being confirmed and he said, yes, I'm going to respect precedents. His own father said, oh, no. Of course, Sam wants to get rid of abortion. We're a pro-life family. We should have listened to his dad.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And should have listened to the people who grew up with him in Trenton, New Jersey, and Hamilton, New Jersey, and knew who Sam Alito was and what he supported in his youth before he made it into the U.S. Attorney's Office and before he became a judge and so on. Because all of that is something that the Republicans who nominated him looked at. They knew exactly how he was going to vote, regardless of what he said, to get votes from Susan Collins or whoever he got votes from, who he assured, he was going to be respecting precedent. They knew the truth, and it's shocking to me that Democrats don't play the same kind of game.
I'm curious how you feel about this. This is related to what we're talking about. Susan Collins is running in Maine to retain her Senate seat. And one of the things that she's constantly being asked about is, her vote to confirm Brett Kavanaugh. And she has said, and this kind of surprised me, she could have said, I was hoodwinked, but instead she has said, he told me that he respected precedent and, I believed him. And sort of like if that turned out not to be true, it's not like my fault. Like, how could I have been expected to know that he would say one thing and do another? And I thought to myself, well, I guess if you were paying attention like the rest of us and had done your due diligence, you might have at least suspected that was the case. I don't think she should be let off the hook for Brett Kavanaugh. She seems to think that she should. She asked him questions. He gave her answers. They turned out not to be true, but, that's not on her.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing about Susan Collins is that she is very much, look, I did, I'm sorry, my dogs are going nuts.
I can't hear them. That's okay.
Oh, okay. I did races up. I did a race up in Maine at the very first interview, and Maine is a very interesting state. Unlike Illinois, unlike New York, where I am, so huge as Maine is geographically, is as small as Maine is politically, and also there are very few people live in Maine compared to how large Maine is geographically. People know, by now everybody knows Susan Collins. And Susan Collins is counting on the fact that people know Susan Collins. And so what Susan Collins is telling her friends and neighbors is, hey, listen, you guys know me. You know that I'm no crazy right-wing, wild-eyed person. I took this guy at his word because I'm a good human being, and I believe people when they don't lie to me, because I'm not a liar, so I expect everybody else not to be a liar. And so, therefore, you should support me. You should believe me when I tell you I was hoodwinked just like the rest of you. I 1,000% agree with everything you're saying, Joe. Of course she should have known. We all knew. None of this was a surprise to us. And she was pressured to vote for him, and she voted for him because she caves, as she always does. But that's, I think, what she's basically counting on is that she's talking to people who've known her for 30 years. The race in Maine that I did was in 96. When she was running the first time. So I followed her career very closely then because we kept intersecting and crossing paths. So, look, if she loses, it is going to be because people are so fed up with the BS that she constantly spouts about how, on the one hand, I'm one of you. On the other hand, I have to vote, to vote with my party. But don't underestimate how well known she is and how people have grown up with Susan Collins. I mean, for a lot of people in Maine, she's basically been the only senator that they've known consistently for the last 30 years. And that means something. I mean, Angus King is the governor, and so people know him as well before he went to the Senate. But the reality is, people know Susan Collins quite well up there.
Well, it's not going to help her if they've known her their whole lives, if people want change and are willing to vote anyway to get it. Well, this is going to be such a fascinating race, Julie. Next time we book you, we are going to test out every different means of getting you on the air so that we have a cornucopia of possibilities, whether, one of them will work, Julie. And I apologize for our technical troubles, but thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Talk to you soon, Joan. Bye.
Bye. We're going to take a break. We'll be back with more after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Well, let's try this technology thing again. Adam Mockler is here. He's a liberal political commentator. He hosts the Adam Mockler Show on YouTube. Adam, thank you for being here. We've had a few little technical problems, but I'm sure this interview is going to be perfect.
It's all good. I'm here with the good tech, and thank you for having me on, Joan. This will be a great conversation.
I'm very pleased to have you here. Tell the people listening about the Adam Mockler Show on YouTube and the kinds of things you talk about and cover.
Yeah, so I'm somebody that's had a YouTube channel since I was about 9 or 10 years old, and I used to do a lot of video game content or random content regarding Minecraft when I was young. But in doing so, I was building these editing skills and production skills that I now use to this day to run on the YouTube channel a political show where I break down the news. I oftentimes do debates with people on the other side of the aisle. I keep it respectful. I'll sometimes go on television and debates. I'll go out to rallies and do debates, all kind of building this media apparatus called Mockler Media. And that's what I do every single day.
And this is the time for independent media. It absolutely is. As people see what once were trusted outlets, especially trying to kowtow and capitulate to this White House because their corporate overlords need a favor in some other aspect of their business. This is the time for individual voices to really gain a lot of trust in the audience. And how do you choose? You say you do a lot of debates. Are you invited to those, or do you organize them? And how do you choose the people you're going to debate with and what you're going to debate?
First of all, I just want to say absolutely you're right about independent media. Independent media has the ability to be a lot more nimble and fast-moving in breaking the news and fact-checking this administration. And it's so decentralized because anybody can tell their story. Anybody can go out there and fact-check this administration at a time when most of the corporate media was owned by 4 or 5 main companies. So it gives us a lot of flexibility. When it comes to how I debate, it started off with me going to Trump rallies in Iowa during the Iowa caucuses. You know, I grew up in Indiana, and I would drive over to Iowa and go to these rallies and have rather respectful conversations. Like, genuinely, I would meet a lot of people who I had good conversations with. We just very clearly disagreed, or at least consumed different media. And then from there, it turned into me getting invited to certain panels, getting invited onto certain shows. I do a CNN show a lot now where I like to debate with the Republicans and go back and forth. And it's really turned into something that allows me to be a youth voice on these programs. A lot of times young voices are either ignored or people don't find it that important. But I think it is important to have the youth voices on these programs.
Absolutely. Are you a regular panelist on CNN? And if so, which show, which anchor?
Yeah, with Abby Phillip Newsnight, I go on a lot and I spar with the conservatives there. It's honestly, I have infinite gratitude to that show for allowing me to build my skills and practice and hone everything. And yeah, I'll be on this Friday.
Well, really? This Friday? Well, you know, you're also in luck because I just read in one of my media newsletters, she just signed a 3-year deal to stay at CNN. So, you know, you're looking good for the next 3 years. Of course, I suppose. Least. If David Ellison is somehow permitted to do this Discovery deal, he keeps saying that, we're going to leave CNN alone. But I seem to vaguely recall he said that they were going to leave CBS alone, too. So who knows, if he completes that deal, maybe you don't have 3 more years, Adam.
Yeah, it's hard to tell sometimes. He explicitly promised Donald Trump, according to the reporting, that he was going to fix CNN. And there's even been moments where Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth will point out CNN reporters and say, I can't wait till the Ellisons put you guys straight. So it's hard to tell how much he's going to change the network. I mean, listen, on one hand, he very clearly wants to influence each network he's in charge of as much as possible to have favorable coverage towards Trump or the Republican Party. On the other hand, he might completely alienate CNN's audience if he makes a pivot there. So I don't know which direction he goes.
Yeah, because, he certainly has not had great ratings success with what's going on at CBS. And, I read the numbers and everybody says, well, Yes, it's summer, and summer is traditionally a low time where for measuring your audience. A lot of your audience just goes on vacation. But I mean, these aren't just low numbers for CBS. These are some of the worst numbers they've ever had in their entire existence. And getting rid of Stephen Colbert apparently is considered part of the reason why the CBS morning show is doing so badly, because people who liked Stephen Colbert shut off the TV, went to bed, turned on the television in the morning, and guess what? It was on CBS and the morning show. There really is a real strong effect. First of all, I believe David Ellison lies. I think that he did a secret deal with Brendan Carr. He doesn't deny that he met privately with Brendan Carr. Mm-hmm. He doesn't deny, when he's been asked straight off, that he made Brendan Carr promises. He just won't talk about it one way or the other. So you know what? If he agreed, hey, you know what? Make this deal go through, and I promise you the second I'm in control, Stephen Colbert will be gone. I mean, come on, you know that's possible.
Yeah, and you know what I find interesting about CBS? If you think about the audience, the viewership dropping, it makes total sense because Trump spent his entire political career labeling CBS as fake news. There were even like recurring legal disputes where he would try to sue and he would try to attack CBS. So he basically disenfranchised his own audience from believing in CBS. He made sure that CBS had no credibility in the eyes of the right. Then it gets taken over by Ellison, and then they try to make a rightward pivot. So now they're losing their left-leaning audience as well. And I guess the question is, who is this for now? Like when Barry Weiss sat down with Erica Kirk, who was the target audience there? I just don't get it.
Do you ever have to sit there with their MAGA guy, Scott Jennings?
Behind the scenes? Oh, yeah. I talked to Scott Jennings a lot. He blew up on me a few months ago, and he yelled,
you were the one he pointed his finger at.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you ever recover from that assault, the fact that he pointed his finger in your face?
Very quickly, within moments, I recovered, and I realized it's deeply fragile of him to constantly dish it out on these panels and then never be able to take it back when I try to actually hold them down to a question. Like this guy will spend all of his panels, all of his time on air, breaking the rules, being condescending, lying, trying to pivot and muddy the waters. And the moment that I try to pin him down, he acts like I'm the one breaking the rules. There's this asymmetric playing field right now in politics, and you know what? It's happening right now to Senator John Ossoff of Georgia. He made a remark about Natalie Harp, and it wasn't even any insinuation. He just said, Trump is traveling with Natalie. That's all he said. Yeah. And now the right wing is collectively melting down, acting like he broke some unspoken rule of politics where you're not allowed to attack people personally. I say Donald Trump's entire political career has been defined by making low blows at other people.
And he didn't say, that incompetent Natalie, that idiot, that moron Natalie. He just said he travels with Natalie.
I mean, he didn't call her a pig. Trump has called female journalists
pigs. He didn't tell her to shut up. He didn't say, shut up, piggy, or any of the things Donald Trump has said.
Yeah, no, it was actually rather like innocent. It was just like a comment that was a throwaway jab. Remember when Robert Mueller died and Trump like spit on his grave right after? I mean, the Republican Party wants to gaslight us and act like we're breaking the rules when they're the ones who have lowered the standard. And that's what you saw with the Scott Jennings clip.
I haven't seen this picked up by the big main medias yet, but the Orlando Sentinel is reporting that your panelist, Scott Jennings, is the #1 candidate to replace Caroline Leavitt as the White House press secretary. So you might not have Scott Jennings to be kicked around by in the future.
No, okay, it's fine. But you know what? It actually reminds me of, it makes me think, perfect. He might be the perfect person for this. He's built a really unique skill at being able to grovel at Trump's feet and play defense for the most indefensible things. Whether it's an Iran war, that was supposed to last 4 to 6 weeks. He'll defend that into week 6, into week 8. We are now 172 days into this war that was supposed to end over 150 days ago, and he is still defending it. He'll defend the ICE raids. He'll defend all of this. So I think it's perfect. I think that him taking Caroline Leavitt's job would be great. I think the reality is it would be a bit of a pay cut, and there's not a lot of career upside in being the press secretary. Like, he'll get a lot of bad clips of him not really knowing what to say. So he'll probably just stay comfortable in his own job. But I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense.
Well, I've observed for a number of people that power or perceived power sometimes outweighs a big salary. So, and Caroline Leavitt, I've heard a lot of people talking about how, she could have one press conference and lie 43 times. And so she was perfect for the job. And let's face it, Scott's got a lot of practice saying things that are untrue. I think, frankly, Abby and the other shows he's on, sometimes he just wears the hosts down, because there is so much that comes out of his mouth that is wrong. That I don't know if he were on a show of mine on a regular basis. I think at some point I would just get tired, and I would just hope the audience knows it's him. They know he can't be trusted. Do I have to interrupt him and correct him every time? I don't know. Do you think that the CNN hosts do their job when it comes to Scott Jennings?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of times when CNN hosts assertively push back and fact check him, but what he deploys is a strategy that I call just muddying the waters. His goal isn't even to explicitly win every conversation or make every conversation a good point for Trump. He just wants to sit there and muddy the waters enough where the audience is confused on whether Trump actually did something bad. So, for example, when Donald Trump sent out this Truth Social post, directing then Attorney General Pam Bondi to essentially target 3 different politicians. He said, Pam, please target these 3 people as the AG. And it was Adam Schiff, Letitia James, and James Comey. It was like, it's unprecedented. The president of the United States openly directing the AG to prosecute people, right? We were debating about this on a panel, and Scott had no defense for this because it had never happened before. So I asked him, can you name one example of this happening in any other administration, Democratic or Republican? And he brings out this random example of Biden privately being annoyed that Merrick Garland wasn't going fast enough with something. Like, he basically tries to muddy the waters with this random example that is not equivalent. It is niche. It didn't even apply, but he was able to try to muddy the waters. And trust me, the entire panel jumped at him and was like, dude, that is not true. This is not equivalent. Biden never openly asked his AG to do X, Y, and Z. But Scott Jennings sat there with this smug smile on his face, and I realized in that moment, he's just muddying the waters.
I was going to say that that's one of the things that he does when people do try to fact check him or correct him. He just gets this. He gets this look on his face. I see the same look whenever I think J.D. Vance thinks Donald Trump is going to die and he's going to be president eventually. He gets this little smile, this little smug look on his face, no matter what the context is. You can be talking to him about, oh my God, hundreds of thousands of people are dying, and he's smiling because he's like, I know I'm going to be president. I know I'm going to be president. Just hang on, I'm going to be president. Woohoo!
I like how candid Chicago radio shows are. This is great.
Well, I see it over and over again. And, supposedly Rubio and Vance, or Vance and Rubio, is Trump's dream team, and the only reason that I read that sentence is because apparently Pete Hegseth has decided that he's going to help other Republicans. He's going to go to Iowa and campaign. Isn't that interesting?
It's really interesting, and I'm not sure he's helping them at this point. I mean, Pete Hegseth, to me, represents a currently failing war with Iran, where sailors are stuck, they're trapped on the USS Abraham Lincoln, and he's out there campaigning in Iowa, which is really, really weird to me. It's almost just as weird as Todd Blanche going to one of the Trump Republican rallies. That is our Attorney General.
Yes, I believe that's a Hatch Act violation, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's a Hacked Act violation. It's a violation of the separation of powers, and it's honestly just a little bit disturbing to see a politicized DOJ in that manner. Just because it's in the executive branch does not mean that the president and the attorney general can be buddy-buddy. But going back to Pete Hegseth, it's also just similarly disturbing that he thinks he can boost the approval rating of the Republican Party. I mean, this Iran war is something that is breaking through to younger generations. Anybody that passes a gas pump every single day, anybody that thought we weren't going to get into endless wars is now being kind of just smacked across the face. And the point that I was making when Scott Jennings blew up on me really quickly is that we've gotten zero concessions from Iran throughout this war. The goal of any war is to use military force to extract political concessions from your opponent. We've gotten zero from this war while bearing all of the cost. And Pete Hegseth is the face of that, so he shouldn't be out there.
Well, don't worry, because once we bomb Oman, I'm sure Iran will sit up and take notice and be much more cooperative. Have you ever heard anything as absurd? We're going to bomb the country that is mediating the agreement we are so desperate for. I mean, it makes your head explode.
The only thing that I've heard that's absurd as that is what Trump said like 2 hours later when he said that we're going to withdraw our military from South Korea partially because Kim Jong-un is nice to him. Like, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? I don't get it.
Yeah, you and me both. We're way past time to take a break. We are going to come back with Adam Mockler right after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
If you want to be cool and hip and politically up to date, you need to be watching the Adam Mockler Show on YouTube. He is somebody who lives and breathes politics the way most of the people who listen to this radio station do. And, you know, one thing that you just said that I want to go back to, Adam, you talked about, I mentioned that Pete Hegseth announced that he was going to go to Iowa and campaign, though a lot of people think he's there to campaign for himself, and whether or not the people, the Republicans there, really wanted that kind of an association, that kind of help. Recently, the woman who's running for Senate in Alaska, Mary Peltola, basically told Kamala Harris, I don't want your help. Kamala Harris has a PAC, and she did a promotion for the PAC trying to get donations, and she was like, you know, there are great people running for office. Mary Peltola in Alaska is a great candidate, and we really need to support her. And her campaign was like, you know what? Don't do that. Don't do that. We don't want your endorsement. We don't want you campaigning for us. And there was some question about whether the money raised by Kamala using Mary's name was actually going to end up supporting Mary, or whether it was going to just build this PAC that Kamala was going to be in charge of. But I thought to myself, I thought that was jaw-dropping, especially since there have been, as I'm sure you've heard, rumblings that Kamala thinks that maybe she'll jump back into the presidential race in 2028. What did you think when you heard all that?
So I think that Kamala is gearing up for a 2028 campaign. And as somebody who's a leader in the party, she keeps putting her thumb on the scale of certain races, as leaders should. But the cold, hard reality right now is that there is a massive anti-establishment wave, both among Democratic voters and just the broad constituency. People want change agents, and that explains a lot of the phenomena we've been seeing in the Democratic primaries. Abdul El-Sayed beat Haley Stevens in Michigan very narrowly because people want change candidates. Even Zohran Mamdani taking on the establishment is a good example of this. So Mary Peltola is fighting a rather uphill battle in Alaska for her 2026 race. And I think right now she doesn't want to tie herself to an establishment that is very unpopular. Now, whether or not that's fair to Kamala Harris is a very good debate or question to have. But if you just look at the raw numbers, being associated with either the Biden administration or what's perceived as the Democratic establishment is oftentimes a weight right now. Like if you're a Democratic primary candidate and you're taking money from special interest groups and you are really associated with the establishment, you're going to be fighting an uphill battle. People want these outsider candidates. So I think it's as simple as that. It's a calculation that's like, hey, we're not trying to tie our campaign to Kamala Harris's campaign or Kamala Harris's overall brand, but I don't think it has to be like inherently disrespectful. I think she said Mary Patola's campaign said broadly, they're just not associating with like certain fundraisers.
Why is it, Adam, that you can see quite clearly that this is a change election? I can see quite clearly that this is a change election. And yet, when I listen to the things that Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer say, they don't seem to have that same view of reality that we do. I don't understand if that they're just too insulated. They've spent too much time on Capitol Hill and not enough time talking to people in the country. But it does seem that they are out of step with the Democrats in this country. What do you think?
I think them being insulated is part of it. I also think you have to look at the incentives of politicians. So right now, the incentives of people like Chuck Schumer or Hakeem Jeffries are to protect their own power. And when they see that people like them are losing primaries and becoming increasingly unpopular, rather than changing, they seem to be rather stubborn in the sense that they want to continue doubling down on the same exact things. They, in their minds, have the incentive to keep things the same and not change things, because when things are the same, they have more power. It's that simple. I think a lot of politicians fall victim to these incentives of the political institutions. So certain politicians take money from AIPAC or from other special interest groups, when right now it's unpopular, but that's the incentive that is created. Even Mitch McConnell right now, he's been, missing for a while, but he's still clinging on to power. Mm-hmm. It's because the incentive of the people around him, the staffers, the people in his team, are to maintain their power. They're not going to willingly give up the last bits of power that they have. And then finally, I just don't know if some of the leaders that are established understand how nimble and flexible and overall captivating these new campaigns can be. I like Abdul al-Sayed a lot. By the way, he's not a DSA guy. He's not a socialist. He's a free market guy. He's rather pragmatic and practical, and he knows how to leverage social media in a very flexible and nimble manner. And I just don't see that with some of our established leaders.
Yeah, and people don't understand, they look at the sort of a manifesto for the Democratic Socialists of America. But Democratic Socialists, the very definition that I have is that a Democratic Socialist is still a capitalist. But the difference is that a Democratic Socialist believes that government should help people. I know that that's a radical idea, especially if you're a Republican, but it's an idea I can get behind. Oh, by the way, speaking of age, I'm sure you've seen where Chuck Grassley is running for re-election.
No way.
Yes, he is. And I think if he does get reelected, he's going to be something like 96 or 97 when he finishes his next term.
Oh, he's almost ready to go into the White House at this point. I feel like he could be the next president.
Oh, Adam, that's perfect. Oh my God.
Wait, he is 92 years old. Listen, it's not even an ageist. Like when it comes to pilots, for example, you have to retire at the age of 65 as a pilot because you have the lives of other people in your hands. You're literally, you're holding the lives of the people in the plane in your hands. Now, I don't know if it should be that rigid with elected office where you just be 65, but you similarly have lives in your hands. It's scary that a 92-year-old will be 96 when he leaves office. It's wild.
It is, isn't it? Let's see, we have like 1 minute left. Just real quick. Here in Illinois for our primaries, AIPAC was the kiss of death. Pretty much any candidate that took AIPAC money and it became public, they lost and lost badly. Do you think the tide is turning on the whole PAC money, corporate money?
Yeah, it's absolutely turning, and AIPAC is a litmus test for broader views of politicians. It's not even particularly that one special interest group is worse than the other. There's a bunch of interest groups, NRA, the coal interest group, climate change interest groups, pharmaceutical interest groups. But AIPAC is just so brazenly in your face about it that if a politician is willing to take money from one special interest group like that and distort their views on a certain foreign policy conflict just because of money, then what else will they sell out to? What other special interest groups will they take money to? What else will they do in order to cling on to power and not represent the people in their constituency? The reality is, the current actions being taken by the Israeli government in the West Bank and Gaza are unpopular with Democratic voters. So I don't know why politicians are taking these unpopular positions and taking money from unpopular orgs when, it's unpopular. But I do know why. It's because they want to cling on to power and they want to use the system to their advantage.
Adam Mockler, it is a delight to talk with you. You should watch the Adam Mockler Show on YouTube. Thank you so much for being here. Really a pleasure.
Thank you. We'll do it again soon, Joan. Thank you very much.
Let's hope so. I've got some ideas that I'm going to bounce off of you, but you know what? We'll save that. I just want, it's a little tease so you can get excited when you see the email.
Okay, anytime. Hit us up anytime. Thank you, guys.
We're going to take a break for news. We'll be back with more after this.
It's time for Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive.
I want somebody who's passionate. I want somebody who can talk to people like a real person, who can make people feel things, who can make people want to follow them.
It's time for Joan Esposito on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Want to join the conversation?
I just wanted to thank your station for consistently reporting the facts.
In a world of clickbait headlines, your station is who I trust for the real news.
Call Joan now at 773-763-9278 and join the conversation. Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820.
I am very, very, very pleased to welcome back Paul Lisnek is here. You remember him from WGN. Now you can follow him. He does a show called Paul on Politics. You can find it on Substack. You can find it on YouTube. And, when you've got politics in your blood, you just can't stop. And Paul is one of the most insightful voices on politics. So I am so glad that he has created this show and joins us now to talk about that and other things. Hello, Paul.
Well, good to see you. Yeah, after leaving GN, I did take a break for quite a while, and as you know, turned to my other love of theater and do Curtain Call Chicago on YouTube, et cetera. But, there's so much going on a daily basis, and people sending me questions on social media saying, can you address this? I thought it's time to come back. So, yes, Paul on Politics, now there on YouTube and Spotify and all those places. Mike Quigley was my guest last week. This week, Aaron Del Mar, running for the Republican position of Lieutenant Governor in Illinois, will be my guest. So, going to try and keep it balanced as we go and make everybody kind of happy with folks from both sides of the aisle.
I think that is so important. I have told people who listen to this show over and over again, if you're a Republican, heck, if you're even a MAGA Republican, I don't care if you want to call in and talk to me about an issue. Where I draw the line is I will not let people use the airwaves to tell lies. And, it seems to me, I've talked to conservatives many, many times. Heck, I just had on Ray LaHood, I think last week, who is you should talk to him. He is delightful. And just don't ask him about his son, because I don't think the two of them talk politics much.
I found that because I haven't talked to Ray in years, but I would interview his son, Darren, and I, too, found the same thing. I don't know what, if anything, is going on there, but I always found that exploring that, other than saying, say hi to your dad, was about as far as I would go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really interesting. And, you don't want a political show to be an echo chamber. You read too much about people who can't express ideas well or learn new things because they live in the middle of an echo chamber. And I've never wanted to be an echo chamber. I always want to, each show, I'm hoping somebody comes away with something that they didn't know before, some idea that they didn't have before, some take on current events that they didn't have before. What would you say your mission statement is for Paul on Politics?
Well, I think, first of all, you got part of it, which was to say, Democrat Mike Quigley last week, Republican Aaron Del Mar this week. That's part of it, both sides. But secondly, I think, look, part of my background, was I was a teacher for many years and teaching the bar review course and teaching at college and all of that. And I just think the bottom line is people need to uncover answers for themselves. And what you say all the time, and I think it's part of WCPT, is it's about the facts. So what I try and do, even as I watch political television shows, I try and listen for who there is speaking the party line, not factually, but just clearly has been given a statement to make where you can say, I don't know what's backing that up. And then others that you can watch or listen to who truly can back it up with some statistics and then balance it all for yourself to decide what it is that's going on. I mean, example, we've got so much to talk about today, but the war in Iran. You have President Trump saying everything from the war's over, we control the strait, we're running it all. His latest is, I don't want to negotiate with them so quickly. We'll make them wait. They're begging to negotiate. And you have Iran basically saying, we're not talking to them. What are you talking? In fact, the worst is yet to come potentially with what we're going to do. So, you have to balance all that and say, who's telling me the truth, and try and work your way there. And through all the great guests you have and your discussion, I think you work your way to what maybe the reality of it might be, at least for the moment.
Well, I think that's the responsible thing to do, and that's the responsible way to cover politics. And I mean, I do opinion radio. I do not consider myself a journalist anymore. But when I was a journalist, I didn't let my own opinions color or bias any of my reporting. And the only reason why I think I was successful at that, Paul, is after I first started doing this radio show, I remember there was a woman who called in and she said that she used to watch me on television, and she paused and she said, I never knew you had opinions. And I was like, that is such a compliment. I don't know if you meant it that way, but that really was a compliment because, you know how it is when you're reporting on politics as a journalist. You really keep yourself and your own opinions out of the story.
And that doesn't mean, Joan, that's what people will hear. I mean, when I get stopped on the street or just comments from people in social media, they'll often say either I don't like your commentary. And I respond by going, please understand, I am not a commentator. I'm an analyst. There's a big difference. You will never hear me say what I think about that. Now, that being said, people will hear things, and I've been called, I get it from both sides, right? So if I'm talking to a Democrat, I'm accused of being a Republican because my questions tend to be in that area, vice versa as well. But, one of the great ones who, good friend of yours, of mine from the past, but Dick Kay, who was one of the great political reporters. You never knew what he thought about anything. But when he retired and said, that's it, I'm done, he went on to WCPT for quite a while and basically said, you know what, I'm just going to be me now. And he was entitled to do that. But you never heard him do that when he was with NBC or on the stations because, as you say, the reporter's job, or in my case, the analyst's job, it's not to tell you it doesn't matter what I think. I want you to come to your conclusion. I just want to present, in my case, both sides to you so you can get your way there.
And when Dick Kay worked for NBC, he did try to be even-handed. He was hard on everybody. He was cranky with everybody, whatever side of the aisle you were on.
He was, but he was also beloved. Doogie was a beloved guy, and so I was just so happy for him. I did his show, from time to time with him at the end. It was just nice to see him kind of take a deep breath and just say what he wanted to say.
Yeah, it was great. I'm talking to Paul Lisnek. You should be watching his show, Paul on Politics. You can see it on Substack. You can see it on YouTube. We are going to take a break, and yes, we are actually going to talk about current events when we come back after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Paul Lisnek from WGN. Now you can find him when you look up Paul on Politics. It is on Substack. It is on YouTube. He is still following the current events of the day. And one of the things that I haven't talked about that I know that you have paid attention to is what is going on at the Kennedy Center. The Kennedy Center lawyers went to court. Donald Trump's name had to come off. It was put up there illegally. They took the name down, was behind a tarp. a tarp that they refused to take down. Initially, Paul, I thought, well, you know, it was, I don't know if it was around the 4th of July, and I thought, well, you know, he doesn't want to be embarrassed because he's got all these big plans for the 4th and all these wrestling things, and, you know, he doesn't want people to think about that. But then the tarp stayed up, and now we find that the board of the Kennedy Center is trying a workaround. They want to get Trump's name on that building so badly that they will use any loophole or that they can find. And now they're trying to say, well, we're going to put up that it's the Kennedy Center, something like, what is it, Paul? Like rehabbed by Donald Trump? What is exactly they're doing?
Yeah, well, you're right. What they're trying to do is get his name up there by saying it's been restored and rehabilitated by Donald J. Trump. So here's what your listeners need to understand. This building is not like any building in Washington where, you know, people, supporters of the president can say, well, I think his name should be up there because he's going to put marble everywhere. So let's put his name up there. This is a memorial, just like the Lincoln Memorial and the Jefferson Memorial. This is Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial. This building is a memorial. It's a little different because it's also a center for the arts, but it was passed by Congress and built as a memorial to a slain, fallen president. And so the law literally that created this back in the 60s basically says this building shall be named the John F. Kennedy Memorial Center, and the name cannot be changed without an act of Congress. So that, when you say they did it illegally, you're right, because the law requires the name stay the same. So when Trump put his name up there the first time, there was no question it was going to get coming down because it went against the law. Sure enough, that's what happened. And I think what people need to understand again is it's not like any building that he wants to put, because he puts his name on lots of buildings and his pictures on the Department of Justice and so much to talk about. But with regard to this building, he illegally could not do it. So you're right. They took the name down under the dark of night, put up the things, and I'm wondering how long are these schmontas going to stay in the building? And I thought the same thing. Well, his birthday's coming up, and they're going to do the wrestling match. You could come up with reasons. He'll say, "Slow it down, guys." They're still up there, and what is happening now is they don't give up. You remember, he doesn't believe in losing. He just doesn't take no for an answer. It looked like he had accepted the loss because when the court ruled against him, he basically said, "The heck with the Kennedy Center. I don't care anymore."
Yeah.
But that's not the case. So what has happened is the existing board, which is all filled with Trump appointees, he fired everybody else who was on the board. So these are people like his chief of staff, and I think Uma Vance is on there, and, you know, the vice president's wife. Those are the folks who are on here. They said, well, we're going to put his name up there as a restorer of the building. Well, how are you getting around that law? Well, what you just said before was true, which is, to me, they're being too cute by half. They're basically saying, well, we're not going to name it after him. We're going to put him up there like he's a producer, like he's whatever, and we can get away with that. Now, that's what will the courts do with that? I still think it goes against it. I think the law is pretty clear. You need an act of Congress. I think in the end he loses on this, but if it ultimately gets to the Supreme Court, once again with the Supreme Court, which in my view is no longer the a kind of nonpartisan entity it's supposed to be. It's pretty partisan at this point. I can see where you get a 5-2 or 6-3 decision, which says, they're not really renaming it, so he can go ahead and do that. But I think until that resolution is there, I think there's not yet been a court that's made him take the tarps down. I will tell you there is an upcoming date where a judge who's been monitoring this wants a report about what you're doing, what's going to happen. So we may get some kind of action. But the right result, and I say that as a lawyer, not a political analyst, the right result legally is that his name cannot be on the building. Not that building. Go put it on somewhere else, but not that one, because that is a memorial to a slain president. It literally would be no different than if he said, this is the Martin Luther King Jr. and Donald J. Trump memorial. That would be so absurd that people go, you can't do that. Well, right. It's the very same thing when you're talking about the Kennedy Center, but some people draw a distinction. There is no distinction.
Why do you think he's so obsessed with having his name on everything? Do you think it's because truly, I know he has a very strong sense of self, but I think deep down he thinks that once he's gone, he'll be either reviled or maybe even worse, forgotten. And he doesn't want that to happen. I don't know. Maybe it's because he's very, very ill and figures this is his last hurrah. I don't know what's going on, Paul, but it is just absurd. It's to the Kennedy Center. You know, it's you can now get the special Donald Trump passport. There's a coin that the Mint's going to put out. I mean, good God. He doesn't realize how pathetic this all looks. But I really am puzzled sometimes by what motivates it. What do you think?
Well, for one thing, by the way, remember, he never says he's ordered any of this stuff. Everybody, according to him, has come to him with the idea, we should put your face on the $250 bill, which is illegal, and that didn't come around. Okay, well, we'll put it on a coin because Woodrow Wilson once did, right? So basically, if you listen to him, none of this is his idea. It's all being done by other people, and they come to him and how it's the greatest honor that he's doing it. Look, I try and analyze. Part of my role as an analyst is to say, if I loved President Trump, how would I explain this? Because if I loved him, I would probably say, you know, it's okay to do these things, or, you know, he wants the arc, which if you don't think that's not going to be called the arc to Trump or the Trump arc or something down the line, you're kidding yourself, and all these other things. I actually, when you analyze it, even people who love him, I think would say, well, he deserves everything. Remember, there's people, John Cornyn was going to name some major highway in Texas after him before he didn't get Trump's endorsement for the primary. That thought went away. We're not going to name him for that. He gets the airport in West Palm Beach has come his way. I do think, now let's play psychologist here, and I'll put on my PhD in communication and psychology hat, which is I do think it is about his sense of self. I do think he fears that when he's gone, not that he would be forgotten, but there won't be enough recognition of him and his legacy. You know, it's like going to North Korea or Russia, these places where the dictator leader there is everywhere. I think he's trying to get his face everywhere. The real question, you know, it's going to be really interesting is for you and I to have a chat in a couple of years, because let's pretend for a moment that there is a Democratic president, whoever it is, Gavin Newsom, Judd Pritzker, whoever it is. Let's say there's a Democratic president. Ordinarily, I would say, well, that Democratic president, man, first thing that they'll do when they walk in that Oval Office is say, get the gold off the wall, get rid of it, and let's return this back to the way it was. Now, you can do that with some things. I don't know what you do about an East Wing that's been knocked down and whether or not there's a ballroom. Do you, if the ballroom does exist, he wants it to be the Trump ballroom? If you are a Democratic president, you say, no, it's now going to be called, and you can call it whatever you want, but just some other name. The problem is I think Democrats are so I'm just going to use the word weak when it comes to confrontation. They don't want to disrupt things. They don't want to make anybody upset. That in the end, they'll say, let it be. It's one of the reasons January 6th response was what it was. Merrick Garland was too worried. People would think he was being political, so let's do nothing about anything for a year and a half.
Oh, man, that was such a disappointment.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So that's my problem. I think whereas, a Republican president, if all of this were a Democrat doing it, would come in and say, get this stuff out of here. I want it done in 24 hours. You just feel like the Democrats will step in and say, let's get along to go along. But now you're starting to see a little difference there. This may be on our agenda as well while we're together. But what John Ossoff is doing, the first Democrat who's sort of out there, he got himself, I won't say hot water, but he certainly stirred up a lot when he gave a speech yesterday, I think it was, where he's talking about Donald Trump is too busy with the vanity projects. He made a little comment about one of the assistants that he brought with him into the catering cart. He left Marco Rubio. We're talking about the Air Force One situation where they snuck him out on another plane.
Yeah, we talked about that at the beginning of the show because there's a lot of reporting on, like the most recent is probably MSN.com, that Caroline Leavitt was seen in a very tense conversation with Donald Trump and Natalie Harp, and then very shortly after that, she announced her resignation. Yep. By all accounts, I mean, here she is, a woman who's just had her second child, and he takes Natalie Harp in the catering container and not somebody who is his loyal person who's got a family. He puts them on the plane, rightly or wrongly, whatever you believe, whether the threat was real or not. Donald Trump feels there's a possibility that this plane will be blown from the sky, and he leaves Caroline Leavitt on it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's stunning. Again, John Ossoff took it further in terms of some of his comments with regard to Natalie Harp. I'm not going to go there. But the bottom line to it is, look, we want the president to be safe. I'm sure you made this point at the beginning of the show, which is, look, he's got to do what the Secret Service tells him to do. And if the Secret Service says you're going in that food cart and you're going on this other plane, I don't fault him for that. I don't fault anybody if that was the call. I do believe that the Secret Service also has a responsibility. Not that I do believe. They have a charge to also protect cabinet members and other critical people. So what we may never know is the story in terms of, so how did Marco Rubio and Bessent end up remaining back on Air Force One if this threat was seen to be serious, or was the threat maybe not as serious and they didn't have to go through this? That will probably get cleared up. A Maggie Haberman of the world will probably do some reporting on that one day, and we'll get some answers. For right now, there's a lot of unanswered questions, but the bottom line is the decisions he made, if they were his, he had to approve them. President approves everything. You do have to step back and say, what does it say about a person who will, forgetting other people, has this new mom, as you say, Caroline Leavitt, been with him from pretty much from day one. You will never find a more adamant press secretary who will, do your bidding, and then basically say, it's a small risk, but we're leaving you back. And not even tell, because I don't think she knew what the deal was. And the fact that she resigned so quickly after, it's hard to believe there's some other explanation. It doesn't mean there isn't one, though.
Yeah. I'm speaking with Paul Lisnek. You can find him if you follow Paul on Politics, Substack, YouTube. We're going to take a break and be back with more after this.
Don't turn that dial.
A dangerous mistake to make.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, returns right now on WCPT 820.
With me is Paul Lisnek. You can find him on Substack, and you can find him on YouTube, Paul on Politics. We have so much to talk about, and it's so much fun to talk to you, Paul, that we're not going to get through nearly anything of any significance on this list.
We don't have 3 hours to go?
I know. It's always so much fun to talk to somebody who is as knowledgeable and as excited about some of this weird stuff as I am. So
it is my pleasure.
Is that a compliment? I hope it is. I mean it as a compliment. I want to talk to you about, more things having to do with Donald Trump. I don't understand, with the midterms coming, why he seems to be doing everything possible to make sure the Republicans lose big. I mean, the fact that he told people that when it comes to higher gas prices, that basically, if they want to be patriotic, they just kind of have to suck it up for now. And it's not that big a deal. I mean, he seems to be trying to alienate every independent that might have considered voting for a Republican. I don't get it.
Well, looking at this from a lot of different directions, here's the best I'm coming up with, which is, and this is related to our previous conversation. Why does he want everything named after him? Why does he want his name everywhere? There's no question that whatever he is a narcissist and all the things that go with that. So the answer to this issue, the way I look at it, is that people say he doesn't care if Republicans win. Don't think it's about that he doesn't care if Republicans win. I do think that it's about the fact that he knows he's not on the ballot. So in the end, I promise you that if Democrats take, say, the House, which statistically they should, the Senate will see, because I think the whole democratic socialism thing may be presenting some issues. But I think that Trump really wants the ability to be able to say, you see, without me on the ballot, without people being able to vote for me, they don't really care about the Republicans. I am the Republican Party. And now what that means for 2028, I mean, he tries to be the kingmaker, wants to be the kingmaker. So I think a lot of what he's doing, you're right, kind of ensures the fact that Republicans are going to have a really, really tough time but he's not very popular right now. A new poll coming out today, I think from Ipsos, puts him at about 32% or 35. 32 is the magic number for Democrats, because if he's at a 32% rating, which is where George W. Bush was back in the early 2000s, that is most likely when the Democrats take power and control of probably both houses. But that being said, I think this is about, he wants to believe that it's all about him. He's the king of it all. So he really doesn't care if Republicans lose, not to see them lose, but just to show that without him, nobody can win. I think that's what it's about.
I think you are 100% correct about that. that it will almost please him more, I think, if Republicans do badly with his name not on the ballot, even though he has complained, if the Democrats win the House again, I'm going to be impeached again. Oh, and by the way, that Ipsos poll, they asked people how they felt about him involving us in Iran and do they support his efforts in Iran. The support for the Iran war is down to 27%. So even MAGAs are walking away from that one.
Because they're feeling it at the gas pump. And this was Joe Biden's problem several years ago, of course, which was to say, don't worry about it. Everything's fine. You're good. Look at all the statistics. And by the way, he was right that economically, when you looked at the market, things were strong. It's strong under Trump as well. But voters go to the grocery store like you and I do. They go to the gas station. So you can tell me what you want about the fact that the market's never been higher and it's hitting new heights. But if every week I'm going, but my paycheck just went to pay for my groceries, that's where it's going to hit. And I think that the Republicans who are encouraging him, he's supposed to be on a nationwide tour right now talking about affordability and those issues. He's not doing that tour very much. He's hardly going out. Secondly, the question is how many Republicans, truthfully, who are running for office want him standing next to them, and especially because if he is, his speech isn't going to be how great that candidate is, and look how great the country is and the economy is right now, because no one would buy that anyway. He's going to turn to these other issues. So I think that's what it's all about, and I just think that, for him, even in 2028, I think there's an argument that he won't even necessarily get behind the Republican candidate, whoever it is, because if it's a Democrat, that allows him to say, you see, I'm probably the last Republican president you'll ever have. I was the best. He said that the other day, too. Polls show that I am the best president that there ever was. I don't know what poll he was talking about. I can't find it.
Well, I heard there were a couple of people discussing on, I don't know if it was CNN, the fact that Maggie Haberman that was recounting this story, and she said that he was talking. They went into the Oval Office, she and Jonathan Swan, and the agreement was this is going to be a fact check. We're coming out with this book, and we're going to give you the opportunity to fact check some stuff. Right. And part of the discussion was she said he handed her a piece of paper that had names like Stalin and Hitler, and he said, a historian made this list and said, I am more powerful than all of them. Then it wasn't like Gandhi or Martin Luther King or John F. Kennedy. It was all people who had been dictators. Right. Stalin, like I said, Hitler. And she thought that was very interesting. And then he told her, a historian made that list.
I'm going to give you the setup, Joan. Who made the list?
Maggie Haberman went on to say the list was put together by a guy who became famous when he caddied for Gary Player.
Exactly. This was a list put together by a golf caddy. All due respect to golf caddies. I mean, God bless them. I wish them well. But I don't know that I would look to a golf caddy to create the list of the greatest, most powerful people of all time, unless you want to put Arnold Palmer at the top of the list or something like that. It is just such nonsense, but you're right. You're sitting down with Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan, who are about to put this book out. Now, he knows Maggie Haberman well. She wrote another biography about him called Confidence Man. So he already knows what she's capable of and how smart she is, although now, he calls her Maggot Haberman. He's got names for, but but the bottom line is he knows what they can do. So why he didn't use that as an opportunity to really try and shape the truth as he wanted to see it is really incredible. And as you know, almost every time he's doing any kind of conference right now, even though it's supposed to be called for the war in Iran or whatever, it's only minutes until the conversation turns to the ballroom and the marble and all the things that he's doing with it. So he would have made a phenomenal first lady. And I have to say,
I agree with you 1,000%.
Because he's doing everything. I don't like what he's doing. I happen to like the East Wing.
He wants
I liked
to
it when I went to a party there.
he wants to throw parties.
Yes. And Melania, by the way, who has not been seen since, I believe, July 4th, so I don't know what she's doing and where she is, and she can do what she wants. But the point is, she might be going, you know what, Donald? You're doing my job, so I'm leaving. I don't know. Yeah. But he literally is doing the decorating, the parts of it. And, of course, he would say, and his fans would say, he's a builder. This is what he does. Mm-hmm. I don't think, even the people who love Donald Trump, I don't think elected him to say, with this guy, we're getting a ballroom. Yeah. You know, I mean, I just don't think that was the agenda for people.
Well, when Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan went in to the Oval Office, she said there were a bunch of photographs on the desk, and she assumed it was a bunch of stuff to do with the Iran war. And he held up the photographs, and they were all of trees. And he said, see these trees? I really like trees. Like, we're going to put trees here, we're going to put trees there. And she said that she was just dumbfounded that with the Iran war in full tilt, he wanted to talk to her about trees. You're absolutely right. He's the perfect first lady, though I do think what I read is that apparently the documentary wasn't enough. Apparently Jeff Bezos is going to produce Melania, the television show.
Yeah, there's the mini-series on its way, showing you even more than and I have to admit, I didn't quite catch the documentary, so I missed it. But the documentary series, well, you know, that we'll see. But, you know, even with all the stuff that's making front page news and all of that, there is so much. Look, I'm not a I love the environment and all that. I'm not an expert in the environment and things, but it's tough for me to pick up a newspaper every day. I still read newspapers and to go on and, you know, the latest. They're talking about, I mean, just getting rid of in this protected lands, trees and land and natural preserves and place for protected wildlife and all these things. This stuff is all going away. The laws are literally changing by the day. And if your listeners don't know what I'm talking about, just go to Google and just start putting in, you know, tree destruction of national forests.
Well, you know, we got to be drilling there, and we got to be selling some of that stuff off to private people because, you know, it costs money to maintain all those trees and everything. And, you know, so let's just turn it over to the private sector. They can tear it apart. They can drill. They can mine, whatever they want to do, as long as they pay the price.
Well, and that's the point. They have given him so much money. There's also, this has been reported, and again, as a lawyer, as somebody who trained the Department of Justice, there apparently is an order from the White House which is telling DOJ that they should be going after what I'll call sort of low-level crime, not going after this upper-level stuff. And I don't know if this is on your agenda with me for today's conversation, but as a lawyer, I was so stunned. If you happen to watch Todd Blanche make his appearance on Meet the Press over the weekend, where he, in a sentence, literally said, of course the Department of Justice isn't independent from the president. This is where that is insane. And in fact, there's a famous story of Barack Obama when people said, well, Eric Holder, he was behind Obama. When he got appointed, Obama looked at him and said, I'm appointing you, but you are not my lawyer. You are the lawyer for the people of the United States. And that's the right answer. And this attorney general apparently is clearly, and he doesn't hide it, taking his orders from the president. That is such danger. And you might say, well, danger for who? How about the former Olympian who was just prosecuted until they realized they had no charges for destroying the reflecting pool? And when you get the final answer, which is, oops, sorry, we made a mistake, the answer to Todd Blanche is, no, get him. I said get him, because I will not be wrong. We're not going to say it's the job that was done. We're going to say he destroyed. And now you have like innocent people. It's you, it's me, it's anybody who's out there who find yourself in the wrong place, and you've got the government coming after you. To me, that's one of the most terrifying things which we're dealing with right now.
Well, you know, Paul, Todd Blanche explained that Donald Trump is the government. So don't you see, by doing what Donald Trump wants him to do, he is doing what the government needs, because Donald Trump is the government.
And to answer that, Joan, because look, as you have Republicans listening to you, maybe MAGA people, maybe Trump supporters, I always I want to balance that off, because they might be saying, listen to these two people being very liberal. No, that's not the point. Your point is well taken, but for this legal reason. even if I love Donald Trump, even if I approve of everything he's doing, tear down all the trees in the country, because I love you, Trump, do it all. The problem is he's doing everything unconstitutionally and against the law. That's the problem I have. So whether you love what he's doing or you don't love what he's doing, the issue I have is when you don't follow the law and the Constitution, that's when chaos exudes, and that's where we are right now. There is no Congress. Congress doesn't exist. So essentially the president can just sign orders every day of the week doing things because there's no one to stop any of it.
The checks and balances are gone.
Non-existent. They're gone. And you have them in the lower courts. That's the only place we have a check right now, lower courts, who then, if it makes it to the Supreme Court, more likely than not, get overturned.
Paul Lisnick and I are going to take a break. We are going to return with much more after this.
Don't turn that dial.
A dangerous mistake to make.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, returns right now on WCPT 820.
And Paul Lisnick is here. I may have mentioned that he is doing a new political show. It is called Paul on Politics. It is on Substack. It is on YouTube. Is it on any other channels, Paul?
It is on Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeart Radio. It's pretty much anywhere you get your podcast, you can find it as well.
Well, now I'm jealous.
And I hope people will subscribe. Got to have them subscribe. If you want to watch it, you want to do that on YouTube. But if you want to just listen to it while you're walking the dog, then Spotify and Amazon and Apple and all of those are just fine.
Well, you probably know this, but I was having dinner many, many months ago, probably last summer, with Linda Yu and one of her adopted granddaughters. And I was talking to this young woman about podcasts. And I was like, do you listen to podcasts? And she was like, oh, my God, I sure do. And then she thought for a minute and she said, well, actually, I watch my podcasts on YouTube. And I think that is, when podcasts first started, it was audio only and you would listen to it. But for the younger generation who's used to these podcasters who set up a camera, even if the camera is just them sitting there in a room behind a microphone, that's what they want. They want that visual component as well. So the fact that you're doing that is brilliant, I think.
Well, it is where people are going today, and it's not just, certainly it is young people, but, you know as well as me, if I stop somebody who's in their 30s or 40s, when you said, and even just talk about, did you watch television? They just say, I don't watch TV anymore. And look, you and I grew up on TV, we get it, but today, that's not the place because people say, I want to watch or listen to my podcast when I feel like doing it. So, and I'm guilty too. I get up in the morning, I take the dog, I go out, and I go through what the new podcasts of the day are, and that's what I listen to, as I'm walking the dog. Because, it's where it is, Joan.
Yeah. Well, today, before I started the show, and this is quite possibly too much information, Paul, I went to get my yearly mammogram. And, I'm checking in at the little registration. And, Paul, I've been away from television for a very long time. You left like 5 minutes ago. I've been gone for like 20 years. And this youngish woman behind the counter, she looked up at me and she goes, are you the one from television? And I was like, yeah, thinking to myself, honey, you weren't born then.
Right.
And she said to me, my dad and I used to watch you. So there was the component, the dad component, because when it comes to cable news, local news, the audience is, if you're lucky, you have people in their 50s, but most of it is 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Right. And here's, one of the reasons my kids never watch my show. And part of that is because it's kind of like if they wanted to see it, they'll just go online when they feel like it and they'll watch it then. These days, nobody, certainly in their 20s, 30s, whatever, wants to feel that this appointment television thing that you and I grew up with doesn't exist anymore, but not for us. It's no matter what it is. And even if football game, some game that people want to watch, they might, record it and watch it on their own time and just try, good luck avoiding the news to find out who won or lost. But it's just the way it is. So it's been a lot of fun sort of going to the podcast world and feeling a little more free there as well than I did on television. And there's nobody in my ear telling me to go to break or to wrap it or to do anything else. I'm doing what I want to do.
And not that you would, but you can say a lot of words on podcasts that you can't say on the radio or on television.
You can. I still am hesitant to do that. I grew up not doing that.
Because
but,
if I'm being interviewed on a podcast, if something escapes my mouth, my initial reaction is panic. I'm on the radio. They're going to dump me. Now I have to, fill for the next 7 seconds till it catches up again. And then I'm like, no. It's a podcast. It's a podcast. It's a brave new world.
Right.
But yeah.
I have to tell you, I was hosting on WGN Radio one day, and this was years ago. I had the cast of Book of Mormon on. Now, good luck trying to play a song from the Book of Mormon.
Oh, yeah.
Which
Good luck
with
with that one, kiddo.
I thought I found one, the song "I Believe," and it was a beautiful song. And I played it with the cast sitting with me, but I forgot that when the song kind of has its end, there is a swear word, one of the worst, that gets said. And I remember the cast looked at me, and I was sort of like, oh, my God, because I wasn't expecting it. And the producer came in my ear, and she went, I got it.
Oh.
Because there's just such fear. And one time on a podcast, on my theater podcast called Curtain Call Chicago, I was interviewing, if you know who Leah Delaria is, the actress. She used to be Orange is the New Black and whatever. And she's a comedian and incredibly foul-mouthed. And when we started, I said, Leah, please, I know it's okay, it's a podcast, but please don't. Because at that time, my podcasts were also running on WGN+, so there was a TV component to it. Well, let's just say I could not run that podcast on WGN+, because even though she said I understand, the F word was the hello. I mean, it just never ended. And but that's the way some people are. As part of, in her case, part of her humor. And it was pretty funny, but I couldn't play it.
Paul, not only do we have politics in common, but I love live theater. I mean, movies are great. I'm not gonna trash them. I don't go out to the movies nearly as much as I did before COVID because you wait a few weeks and it's on your television.
Right.
But I will get dressed, put some makeup on and comb my hair and go to see live theater. I love Writers Theater. I love Northlight Theater. I love Shakespeare Theater. I love Steppenwolf. I think that there's something about that art form, and it's not like any other art form to me. I don't know. I'm not very articulate about this. Have you thought about this? Can you say this better?
I don't know that I see it better, but because I do a weekly podcast about theater, but here's what I think you'll find interesting. While a lot of my shows, I sit with the cast of a show, like Catch as Catch Can at Steppenwolf with Gary Cole and others, and that's fascinating. But sometimes I take a little twist in it. So The Outsiders, right, which just wrapped its run here in Chicago, great show based on a great book. But what people may not know is that the book for the musical was written by Adam Rapp. Adam Rapp, who is very well known for other plays that he's done, he's also the brother of Anthony Rapp, who created the role of Mark in Rent. So I said, you know what? I don't want an actor from The Outsiders. I've done that. Let's get Adam Rapp. And they did. And by the way, people who are listening to us right now, I missed the show. No, you didn't, because it's YouTube. So you can go to YouTube, and in that case, Curtain Call Chicago, and it's my very first show is still there. You just look through them and play it. But what you're reminding me is I'm going to plug one little thing here, because on Sunday night, and this is my show this week, there is at Ravinia Sing Along Grease, and I'm going to be hosting it, emceeing it. And so this Sunday night at 5:30, for your listeners that have families, they can dress up their kids as Danny and Sandy and whatever. 5:30 Sunday, get tickets to Ravinia, the lawn, there'll be screens, or the pavilion. I'm going to host it. We've got lots of fun stuff. I have a couple of original cast members from Grease who I tracked down and are going to join me, and a couple of young actors who played Danny and Sandy recently in Chicago. And we're going to teach the families, the kids, how to do some of the things you got to do in Grease, like the hand jive and whatever. Then the movie will get underway. It's a sing-along. The words will be posted on the screen. It's going to be a great night. That's this Sunday starting at 5:30. I hope you don't mind. That's a little plug, but it's a personal plug because I'm doing it.
You should be plugging something like that. I've loved theater for a long time. As you know, there was a time many years ago where Chicago was so exciting. We had Steppenwolf. We had Organic Theater. We had Remains Theater. And they were doing such amazing work. And I remember going to my news director and saying, we should do like a series of reports on some of the people who are doing such amazing theater in Chicago. And they kind of looked at me like, okay. And I'm like, this is like the most exciting city in the entire world right now for live theater, and it's right here. And I think it was more like, oh, we don't really care, but she wants to do it. I suppose we'll let her. And one of the people I interviewed was Gary Cole. And I got a picture of him from his prom, and he wore this maroon jacket that I can't get out of my head. So much of my previous life I have completely forgotten. But for some reason, that maroon jacket, that cranberry jacket, will live with me till the day I die, and I have no idea why.
And, when you do something like that, like talk to Kerry Cole, again, when we did those things on television, let's be honest, we're reaching a Chicagoland audience. But when you do it these days, I'm talking you into doing a podcast. When you do a podcast and you interview Gary Cole, my goodness, I was getting hundreds of views because then there are pages on Instagram called Fans of Gary Cole, and they find you. And once they find you and they like you and they share you, boom, the views start going up because his fans worldwide start to tune in and watch this thing. So I think that's one of the reasons that the YouTubes and those kind of podcast things of the world are so big today, is because no longer do you have to say, oh, you're out of my viewing range. Today there's nobody outside
my ADI,
your viewing range.
I'm sorry, you're beyond my ADI. Which, for those who didn't grow up in television, it was your area of dominant influence. Like, where did your signal go?
Right. What's your wattage? But by the way, that's true for WCPT, because people may say, oh, it's an AM station, I'm not getting it at home. But you don't have to just get it on your radio at home.
Right.
Today you go, you go online, you go to WCPT.
And you know what, Paul? I know I'm running late, Matt. Give me a second. A lot of the people who listen all across the country because they listen on their computer. You go to heartlandsignal.com, you click the listen live button, and it's great. It's absolutely great. And I will reveal a little secret before we wrap up. If you listen on the stream, there's no dump button on the stream. So if a bad word goes out on the stream, you will hear it. A bad word you will not hear on the radio. So there you go. Another reason to listen to the stream.
Exactly.
Paul, we are out of time. I don't know how this happens. It is.
I don't know, because the hour flew by, and I was just so looking forward to it all week. And thank you. And I hope we didn't run into somebody else's time. But it's just such an honor and pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, well, we're just driving it home with Patty Vasquez is next at 5 o'clock. We are just taking time away from the news right now. Paul Lisnick, Paul on Politics. Please find him. He's everywhere. I will obviously be here tomorrow, and I'm sorry I don't get a chance to tell you who's on anybody's show, but trust me, it'll be good. Be here. I'll see you at 2 tomorrow. Good night.